Windows 10.
I don't understand. It works on Windows 10 on mine. You don't have
Welcome to
fonts.
development. You're going to say that the rest of your career. I don't understand. It works on mine. That is like
bombs. Is it hearts, bombs?
It's still supposed to be heart, bombs, and coins.
Hearts, stars, horseshoes, clovers, emblems, lots of gold and rainbow, and the red balloons. It's Lucky Charms. He's making a Lucky Charms game.
Welcome to less.
But
yeah, we're a day late.
If you're on Windows 10, it should work because you have support for. Unless you don't have emoticon fonts in your computer somehow. But why wouldn't you have that?
I don't understand. It works in Mario. He's got questions.
What browser are you using?
Chrome.
That should work. That makes no sense.
It makes me so happy. I know. It was just like, that's the thing. They said the thing, the meme, but in real life.
But I tested on 3 or 4 devices. Even on my phone, it works.
Sorry. I was not trying to ruin your day. I was trying to just ask what the function of things were. Because you're making a...
So the question mark, whichever one you're missing, is one of the objects you have to click.
Sure.
And we're live. We're talking about a game of.
To the surprise of no one, we are nerds. Yeah. Like they, if you see us in our faces, and the title says "Lord of the Rings Fellowship Extended Edition," after we've been talking about Lord of the Rings for like 3 months, and then we're talking about coding, DevOps, all this shit.
To the surprise of no one, hopefully.
Yeah.
Right.
Unless you're new.
This is while we weren't recording, so this is where all the extra BS that we talked about comes out.
This is the episode for it, so
right. And how long's it been since there's been 5 of us here? Like, holy crap! So
people keep traveling, or like having family, or nothing is important as podcasting.
Andreas gets sick every month.
I do get sick a lot, but that's because I'm on medication that actually makes my immune defense worse. So
you're not living in a great capitalist democracy, and so
actually, I'm getting very expensive medicine for free because I live in my country. So
and it's clearly not doing shit for you because
it is.
Sick.
That's not true. He just said it's making his immune system worse.
Yeah, that's a side effect. But don't you guys remember back in the day when I had the long hair and I had that whole red ring on my hairline? We don't remember, but I had that. That's because I had
Hold on, let's go to the archives.
You can go see it on the YouTube channel.
All the hair that's on your face used to be on the top of his head.
I used to have really long hair, like down here. But that might be pre-Tom Bombadil.
I mean, if you're going to be a coder, you should probably bring that hair back.
I don't know. I started because my hairline was going, so I started just going short hair.
Just committing.
Yeah. See, you see all of the Ben, great hairline. E.G. looks like a pretty good hairline. Justin, I'm not sure. He's hiding it. I can't tell if it's good or not. It's pretty good.
Feel better.
Yeah. Alex,
he's hiding it behind.
They always have great hairline, almost always. So, and then there's me with my fucking McDonald's hairline.
Wow.
Hey, at least I'm not my what's that in English? My dad's brother, my uncle, I guess.
Uncle.
Yeah, because we have specific words for if it's mom or dad. He went bald in like 24. It was like moon. So yeah.
Oh, that was a friend of mine. Actually, a couple of friends of mine went bald or were balding pretty early.
I have heard that generally, if you have your hair by 30, you will have your hair for forever, with mild changes.
Okay, so I'm just.
I've had relationships end very suddenly.
So this is what I have, and then just more recession, I guess, maybe a little.
Yeah, I mean, you should always be thinking you're going to lose it, but if you have it, you might be able to take some solace in it by this point in your life. Because I'm almost 30, therefore all of you must be older than 30.
So it's like Schrodinger's hair.
I was going to say that would be hilarious if you turn 30 and you're the one that goes bald.
No, girls don't go bald.
I'll just get
usually,
cancer.
Right?
Start doing chemo.
There's the option.
Oh god.
Yeah.
Some girls go bald. They get alopecia and shit. That happens.
I mean, I've seen very thin-haired, like when they're really old, but
yeah.
Generally, I don't see like bald women in any way.
Well,
like
maybe you should get outside more.
There's got to be at least one viewer who's squicked out right now, so maybe we should just talk about Lord of the Rings.
There's only one viewer currently, so they can be squicked out. It doesn't matter.
So speaking of people losing their hair, Gollum. No.
True.
Sure.
What a segue.
Let's make that worse. That was a terrible segue.
It's good enough. If we were going to talk about the movie and not the books, even though we talked about the movie when talking about the books, it's whatever. Can do that.
Did you guys and did have that? I know not everybody will share that note with the, like look at how they present that little bit of Gollum we see in the first movie to how far they got with making him for the second movie.
Right.
Like it's an insane jump they make there. Whereas like it seems like they didn't have it ready for the first one, but then for the second one it was done, and it was like it's a huge. It's like Avatar levels of leap, right? It was really good.
You wonder because they did it all obviously at the same general time. It was 14 months straight or whatever it was that they did all 3 movies. So
they recorded them, but doing the tech stuff and all the
right.
post processing.
That probably plus he's not really. I think the intent was probably always to have him as really not focused in the first one, and so you can get away with what you do in the shadows and stuff a lot easier.
Right. Yeah. So where does he show up in the first one? Because
he kind of shows up as like he shows up in the mines, right? So you see him crawling, and then you see his eyes and stuff, and then you see him on the log on the river later on, and then he disappears.
Right. Okay.
But other
and there's
than
a silhouette when we're talking about him at some point in like a cave.
And
of course you hear him. You hear him, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. You see his arms when he's being. I'm sorry. Could you do that again, but better?
I want to do it again.
That was actually worse.
Now, see, I haven't practiced this one, but yeah, when we get to the taters thing, do I have a treat for you guys? No, I'm just kidding. But
what did you make us? Because if you didn't send us potatoes, so I'm not going to be happy.
What's taters, precious?
We will certainly not be able to boil them, mash them, or stick them in a stew if you do not send us potatoes.
It's Irish weekend. We should all be eating potatoes.
Right.
What are you doing?
Apparently, we're
surgery.
Watching Andreas having technical issues.
Right.
His mic is a potato.
Oh no!
Wait, I'm on screen.
Pay no attention to the podcaster behind the curtain.
This is our master coder, by the way.
Senior dev. All right, he's said at least 3 senior dev things while working on his first project. No, that's not true. He's worked before, but that's funny. Anyway, okay, Lord of the Rings. Let's get it out of the way. The first movie. It's mostly a masterpiece. I'm sorry. Yeah. I'm just gonna say it. Like I was so hypercritical when. So like I don't think I had read them when Fellowship came out. But there was enough time in between the release and everything that I had read up to the Two Towers when that movie came out. And then I was so hypercritical of the Two Towers that like I didn't read Return of the King until after that movie came out. And because like I think we went to like a pre-screening or like opening weekend or something for the Two Towers. And like, I had friends just be disgusted with me afterwards because they were like, I'm never going to watch a movie with you again because you just didn't shut up about how much you hated it while we're watching it. And it's like, it's mostly fantastic, but like one of my hangups for Two Towers again, but one of my hangups was always like, they did Sting right? Sting is an elven blade. When the orcs show up in Moria, it's glowing blue. And so then we go off and we introduce like 40 or whatever elves to, the Battle of Helm's Deep that they shouldn't have been there in the first place. Why are they not glowing blue? It's not like we didn't have the effects guys. Like that was always one of my favorite moments from the Battle of the Three Armies, right? When you have the really the 5 armies, yeah, sorry. So it started out 3 armies, then 5, but yeah. So you had the 2 orcish armies show up and the elves are just like on blue fire. And for some reason that always hung out with me. But yeah, it was great to see it in Fellowship.
Either, when they're cutting down people and Last Alliance, they don't have their blades glowing.
True.
Is this a quality all elvish blades have in the books?
Yes.
Or is
it's just elvish magic.
Yeah,
like all of their armors
like
and weapons, all of it. It's just like a byproduct of them forging. Their forging process, really, because
elves are big into light.
Yeah, Gandalf's sword does the same thing. Glamdring, all of it. So it was just a really weird thing to me that it was like, okay, well, we did it for Glamdring and we did it for Sting, but we're not going to do it anywhere else. Even though, like,
Gandalf actually does glow in the fight.
We don't see Gandalf's sword glowing.
Yes, he has it out. He's finding. I'm pretty sure.
Well, he gets it out, but I don't remember it glowing.
Yeah, like I said, I don't think it glows. Like
or
Sting
any
glows.
of the other elven swords. Like the only sword I remember glowing was Sting in the movies, so I kind of took it as like it's just
possible. I don't remember Gandalf's glowing either. He definitely doesn't do it in Gondor. I know that much.
I think isn't that a new sword because he isn't his body still in Moria and then he's reborn with a new body?
Yeah, but he goes back to he gets reborn on the same mountain. I mean, he's there. Right?
Okay, I don't know.
He didn't get reborn. He passed out of time and space for an age, guys. Come on.
No, I'm pretty sure the only time his blade glows is when he gets the lightning charge.
I'll have to look, but I thought it did.
I think
against
it's probably
the Balrog
twofold. It's probably because they want to focus on those elements when it's more, because you kind of expect someone like Gandalf and a bunch of elves to be able to handle themselves, but a hobbit not so much. So you need this warning type thing. And this is just me.
Well,
I probably wouldn't have lit them all up to make them not look like lightsabers.
Well, Sting doesn't look like a lightsaber, but anyway.
No, I'm saying if you had like 1,000 elves in a row,
sure, maybe. In one thing that they did, because they did it right in Fellowship, though, is like the reason why they know that the orcs are coming is because they see, like I think Aragorn is like, "Hey, Frodo, does your sword normally glow like that?" And they're like, "Oh shit, the orcs are coming!" Obviously paraphrased, but.
What the dialogue's actually not like that? Really?
I know, right? Like, and then Legolas is like, "Lol, bro, I just shot one in the neck." So anyway,
Legolas is very close to be a lol, bro kind of guy almost.
Right? If anybody's gonna lol, bro,
right? Yeah. I mean, like as much of a it feels like a D&D trope of how awesome Legolas is. That's the point of elves in Tolkien, is that they are basically gods, that they are super capable like that.
Right. They're closer to the gods than anybody except for Gandalf in the party, right? Because Gandalf is theoretically a demigod, even though he's got talk about power as restrictive, like a trope out of the Dresden Files that I'm glad that, Jim Butcher paid attention to. That is front and center for the Lord of the Rings. Like, it's still subtle, but it's like the reason why Gandalf continuously is just tricking people and generally seems like he's getting his ass kicked compared to like Saruman isn't just because Saruman's the oldest and the wisest of us or whatever. It's because like they're supposed to not use their power unless they're fighting against other like creatures. Like, he probably would have been forgiven for lightning bolting the Balrog. But instead he's just like,
back. They're like, yeah, that was cool.
Yeah, right.
In
Two Towers we get that, but yeah, like him smiting the bridge instead. Like to me, like that's why like it's funny because like Gandalf is the one to emulate for a lot of wizards because it's like sure he probably could absolutely throw down and start like smiting mountains and shit because he's got all this power, or he could just talk to these trolls until they turn to stone because they're idiots. It's like the subtler approach is more fun in some ways.
Oh yeah, it yields the same result, but your influence is supposed to be, I mean, that's why he gets the ring of fire, because he's supposed to be able to help guide people along in that way, as opposed to phenomenal cosmic power.
I did actually talk to my friend about that line in the movie, which is also in the book. The wielder of the secret flame of honor, etc., etc.
Yeah, flame of Udun.
Yeah, if he's referring to the ring, which is like a theory that like one of the most like common theories that's what he's saying, that he has the ring. Isn't that it's supposed to be like it's supposed to be like super secret? Right? Why is he announcing that to basically an adversary on the same level as him?
Because that's his challenge. That's you understand who you're fucking with, and if you want to keep taking this step, what's going to happen?
I am Harry Blackstone Copperfield Dresden.
Essentially.
Yes. Yeah. This is a very Norse thing. You identify yourself and how much the challenge is. You demand the titles of whoever you are facing. So therefore, if you defeat them, you get to add their prowess to yours.
Yeah, but I don't think. See, the rings are secret in the sense that, like, they're not that secret because obviously Sauron knows they're out there. He didn't make those three, but he's the way they were inspired because
Well, if you look
Celebrimbor, right?
in the TV
made
show
Don't.
Rings of Power,
No,
Stop.
just stop.
Yeah, you're not going to get anywhere with that, dude. So
he actually
next,
had
you're going to start
he
citing
actually
Disney
had quite
canon
the
like anybody
hand
gives a
in,
shit.
in forging
Yeah, I
these
know.
rings.
Well,
Yes.
so what happens
He-
is
and he
in the
did.
story, yes, he does
Yeah.
give tutelage to Celebrimbor, who makes them, and that's why he could still exert influence, but the elves never put them on until he's gone in spirit form, or they think he's gone completely, so that way he
Right.
can't.
Also, just to clarify a couple of things for you, since it sounds like you might be getting stuck in some deep lore there. So, Narya is the name of Gandalf's Ring of Fire. That's the name of the Ring of Fire. Udun is an ancient fortress of Morgoth's. Morgoth is the guy that he's the shitter that, like, got the two trees
Sauron's
killed.
boss, right?
Generally, yes, invented dragons and balrogs because he was like, what would be really cool is if these fire-breathing giant bat-winged creatures had somebody to ride, or vice versa. If these, bat-winged fire and shadow creatures fight me, they have wings. If they had something cool that they could ride on, so Flame of Udun is referencing like one of Morgoth's keeps. So, I'm a wielder of the secret fire. He's referring to Narya. You Flame of Udun, he's referring to the Balrog, so.
Mhm.
But that's kind of what's cool about it, in my opinion, too. It's like, for most of us, we're just like, we have no idea what the fuck he just said, but these two are having a conversation. And Gandalf is absolutely like trying to intimidate this 50-foot tall Balrog. I think it's like 20, but he's trying to intimidate this Balrog, and it almost fucking works until the jackass decides to come out on that 2-foot wide bridge, and then Gandalf has to send him to the abyss. But that whole scene is crazy.
That's also kind of an interpretation, right? Like when we read the books, it's more loosely described as flame and shadow, not really having a form, right? Something like that.
Right. Well, and the other
I
thing
think there's
is
like a paragraph, but
the two fires aren't like, you can interpret it as him talking about the ring, but technically speaking, the secret fire is supposed to be. It's like this reference to the fact that he's still a servant of the good people, because those fires were the fires of creation, and he serves them. He serves Eru Iluvatar. He's still on that side. And the flame of Arnor is never really given any kind of particular description, but it kind of relates maybe to like the sun and light. Again, these things that part of creation. So it's not really technically the ring, although you could say the ring is kind of a physical manifestation of those same general elements. So it's really 6 of 1.
Yeah, I took it generally more him reference. So like Flame Keeper and some other like flame like things. Those could be like euphemisms or like a different word for just being a wizard, right? And it's like, I'm not some fucking ranger. You're not just going to come step on me. Like, I am a wizard, which in Lord of the Rings, like all of the wizards are Maya, right? So it's just like, like we're equals at best, and we're about to find out which one of us is more equal than the other. Come test me, bro. Like that's translating from wizard speak into bro speak for you, Andreas, if that helps. So
Are you saying I'm like a Legolas kind of guy? Or?
I'm just trying to bring it down 3 levels for you, like Bob would,
Yeah, it's like those various versions of the Bible, like the Minecraft version of the Bible or something. He's going to do the bro version of Lord of the Rings.
Like the millennial version.
I'll
the
get you my
version
email
of Harry
address.
Potter.
You can, yeah.
Like where it's like he was like totally fronting. That's like there's a Harry Potter version where it's like millennial.
Does Harry Potter need a bro version? Isn't Harry Potter the bro version of Harry Potter? Like,
oh no, it has a millennial version where it was like that was like totally sus stuff like.
Why
that.
would it need a millennial version? We were all millennials when it came.
Yeah, what?
Like,
oh, sorry, Gen C then. The next one.
Yeah. So if you need a Zoomer version of Harry Potter, fine.
Maybe it's that
can make sense. Yeah. So, Andreas, you're so close to being a boomer right now. Like, come on, man.
Have you seen my hairline?
We did talk about that earlier. Yes. Yeah. So, fantastic changes. What were some more of the egregious changes, Tom? Do you want to start?
I think so.
Out of the movie.
Well, I wasn't going to talk necessarily bad about it, but I do want to say that in the process of adaptation, I recognize there have to be some changes. Right? I wonder if I wonder if you guys have the same sense that it's like if the original book is an orange, is this like orange juice or more like orange soda?
This is the better version of the book.
Oh no!
Could you
No, not
explain to
even
me what the
close.
difference between
To him,
like
it's the
orange
orange.
juice and soda
And
would
this is
be in this
Tang.
case? Like,
Well, like so,
like-
how much did it really replace? Does it have kind of just the general? How superficial are the similarities? Because there's some plot elements that are basically the same, but the characterization and the theming that comes from that is very different. I think for many of the characters, I would say,
Like who?
Aragorn is the biggest change in his personality so far.
I think even Boromir and Gimli too, right? And I think
Boromir is
no.
painted more adversarially
Yes.
in the movie than he is throughout the book. I will give you that. And Gimli is less
Sure.
of a comic relief in the movie in the books than he is in
he's
the
almost
movies.
almost not at all. They're all treating this with some seriousness, and I think a lot
Gimli's
of that.
comic relief, but he's still a straight man, guys. Like
Yeah,
you got to have
yeah.
the straight man. Like Gimli
Oh,
is
no,
not.
I'm not-
Gimli's
You can
not
be bi,
playing it
yeah.
off for laughs. He's absolutely being straight with you. You know, he's twitching because my axe is in his nervous system. Like he's serious right now, guys. Like,
That shows the kind of I don't think the beginning of the book is really that kind of frenetic. I guess that kind of that has that kind
Sure.
of personality. I think in the book he's much more stoic, stolid, serious, and a little concerned about Moria, and that kind of governs how he acts in Fellowship of the Ring. Right? And
Well, I
That's a
would say
pretty-
in the book, I can't think of anyone in the Fellowship who isn't, other than the hobbits and Gandalf, constantly stoic, serious.
well, exactly right. Which so I understand why that wouldn't necessarily work in a movie, especially if people don't know it. And I know why it has. Instead of just that ominous poem at the beginning, right? It has in the Black Speech, which starts off the book. I don't know if that was in the audiobook versions. That's what starts off the book, and that's pretty much what you have, unless maybe you read The Hobbit and you kind of know. And I was just thinking, what if Fellowship of the Ring had that kind of cold open in Hobbiton, where it goes from Hobbiton to, and yeah, I'm okay Boromir dying in Fellowship of the Ring. That's the sort of thing that makes sense as a character. That kind of change, I'm not as worried about, even though it does change the character. It makes sense to kind of have that dramatic close to show why the Fellowship has to break. But then throughout it, what if you had just it started in Hobbiton? Would people be tearing out their hair? What is this movie? It's these goofy looking furry footed dwarves and that's it? And because that's kind of how the book is, right? It starts off in Hobbiton. Whereas
I think the book gets to start in
tone.
that way. It's the same way that if, when we're reading Changes and you say we have a kid as the first line, it's like, wait, where's the prologue? Because obviously it's a sequel, what you're getting into.
Right, exactly. But the movie doesn't have that advantage. And that's one of the things you have to change. But when you have that as the starting tone, and you have these dramatic battle sequences, and then it cuts to Hobbiton, and the identification of even Sauron as evil itself is painting with a very is painting with a broad brush some things that are very subtle grading. And I'm not saying the movie should have done it differently in those respects, but I am saying it is significantly different. So is it really just
it's
the extract of orange, or is it just sort of more superficially?
It's more concentrated orange.
If you want
better
an answer,
orange.
So like Sunny D,
It's orange juice because it is distilled from the source. Like almost all of the changes you've got to point to the fact the media is different.
Exactly.
Okay?
And I agree
we don't have 10 years, 2 weeks, or even an entire day to show you all of these different things.
Exactly.
You cannot take the book at face value just because it's like you have to be like, okay, Gandalf showed up and we had a party. A few months passed. Gandalf showed up again. Gandalf spent a few weeks in town. Gandalf fucked off for 40 years or whatever it was.
Right.
And then, I think it was like 17. Yeah. And then he comes back. Like there's major pacing issues with the beginning of the book, especially. But what it comes down to, I lost my train of thought because you guys keep trying to bust in. So
it's the media.
So yeah, like the media is a big part of the changes. So what my main foundational point was going to be for that is that Lord of the Rings is the high fantasy, right? It is the kind of definitive work for a lot of us in that regard. It's one of the earliest, it's the most foundational, that sort of thing. High fantasy, whether it was established beforehand or it's solidified with Lord of the Rings, it always starts off with a boy in a farm. And it only slightly deviates, right, with Frodo, because it's like, sure, yes, he's basically a boy, but they're not on a farm, right? But for all intents and purposes, it starts off with that same naivety, where he has no idea what the world is. He's about to go on a grand adventure, and he's about to meet all these heroes. We could individually cite like a dozen different examples, right?
Yeah.
Movies don't have time for that shit, know? And so if they don't grab you in the first like 5 minutes or whatever it is, how many people walk out of the theater just now because they have no idea? How many people are sitting there and have never heard of Lord of the Rings? We're talking early 2000s, not by now, obviously. But how many people were sitting there and just be like I remember like seeing the posts be like, oh my God, Lord of the Rings is such a joke of a movie. I can't believe they ripped off Star Wars. I'm not kidding you. Like that's a real quote, right? And so like you have these.
A New Hope is the one you could easily point to. You set the tone with the words, and then you've got the Empire chasing the rebels. It's the same overarching world building, and then immediately you go to the personalized story of kid on the farm.
Right.
So it's the same.
And that's a great example. Star Wars starts off with a space battle. They start off with the boarding action and everything like that, and then they go to the farm. That's a fantastic example. And so, like, maybe you could do it, for a movie. Maybe nobody's ever really tried, but I don't think it would be received as well, because now you're hooked. Now you've got to be like, okay, shit, let's go talk to the elves. How did we get there? What are we doing? Why are they important? Who the fuck is this Frodo guy? And then you start like having a party and whatever, right? Because like. Right. Most of us probably were aware of the material on some level before we saw the movie, because it's us, because we're nerds and whatever, like maybe our parents, maybe other family members, whatever. But that's where I'm just like, yeah, almost every single change that happens, you can point to the fact that they're on a condensed time scale, even
for people who don't
when
know
the movies
story.
come out. And for people that don't know the story,
expect.
but we're still talking about 4-hour movies individually. We've got 3 nearly 4-hour movies. We've got nearly 12 hours of screen time, and it's still not remotely enough. And that's where I'm just like, yeah, sure. Maybe I would go as far as to say it's orange juice with extra pulp, because, there is still the oranges in there. But yeah, sure, it's different and, whatever. But
it's different.
I don't know.
It's better.
I don't think it's as far as orange. So it's. I do think that there are significant enough changes to enough characters, enough of the time, and enough of those added elements for the sake of the medium. I'm not saying it's not for the sake of the medium, that it has become its own thing. And I think a lot of what I really, really loved about the Lord of the Rings, the book, this last read through, was the kind of stuff that, for whatever reason, didn't make it to the movie. And I wonder if there were a new adaptation of Lord of the Rings, could it be more of a meditation on meekness and greatness and the two-sided nature of power and wisdom? Is power and wisdom really all it's cracked up to be? And
if you did a 20-season HBO show, yes.
Yes, exactly. Right. And that's the kind of audience, because of the movie. Because I want to give credit to the movie. Because of the movie, and even the Amazon show and Jeff Bezos' billions of dollars, that's the kind of possibility that might happen. Hopefully,
right. But where I kind of agree is because we've had Lord of the Rings, and because we've had Harry Potter and a few other like really long saga, types of series and IPs come out in the last 20 years. I think if they do a remake, right, I think we would absolutely see like 2 movies per book.
Yeah,
and that'll be interesting.
It will be book 1, book 2.
I'm not saying it's better. I'm saying it'll be interesting, because it's like, how do you keep the pacing? How do you keep your audience in the seat for 2 hours?
Yeah, pacing is an issue. Pacing is an issue in these books, as we briefly mentioned and complained about previously. And so the condensation, or just the flow of this movie, is better than the book, in my opinion, because I wasn't waiting 17 years for Frodo to finally start the adventure.
You waited 2 sentences.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Or like a chapter. But like it has this feel of like this is the biggest existential crisis that they can have, and they're doing nothing. But then it's this hurry up and wait over and over and over again.
I think part of it is
we're talking about something that's taken the place over 2,000 years for them, right? Gandalf, theoretically, he had a little bit of a kerfuffle like 50 years ago when the dwarves were busy with the Lonely Mountain. He went off and fought the necromancer who was Sauron's shade and whatever, right? But other than that, nothing has happened for like 2,000 years. So
even the quest for the Lonely Mountain was kind of a check on the ability of Mordor to move people around based on where it was, and the dwarves being there and Smaug being out allowed it was kind of checked Sauron's power, which is kind of just hinted at. I think Lord of the Rings as a book shows the mark of a story that almost got out of hand, and the author was planning on thinking of something much smaller, but in the telling of the story became much grander and deeper and wider and broader and more epic than was originally intended. Which is kind of has a wonderful wildness to it in the story and the telling. I know that it looks like pacing issues in a lot of ways, but I still feel like it's a slowly creeping sense of dread and awareness of the depth of what we're getting into beyond the fact that you see it's book 1 of 6. You see that it starts off on that small level and with the Barrow Downs and with the relief of the Tom Bombadil, but then you also have this creeping dread of the stakes get slightly higher and higher, and these basically pastoral English country folk who'd rather just have second breakfast are being hunted and are realizing they're being hunted and realizing the stakes. And it's almost like and I really do think that Fellowship of the Ring could have worked as almost a horror movie, but they kind of went the direction of an action movie. And I understand why action movies are
adventure movie, more like
adventure.
I mean, if you just look at the two genres, like action versus horror, like I'm a fan of both, don't get me wrong, but horror movies don't make money typically. You have to have something truly exceptional.
Horror movies make money compared to what a horror movie budget usually is, but they're usually a very good return on investment.
Return on investment.
Which one of your
movies?
I was like. Right. Which one of your horror movies has a $200 million budget?
Sure. I was gonna recognize that point that they are not that. I can't think of a big budget horror movie and that scale. Prometheus, is that a horror movie? Is that how much does that cost?
They would qualify. Sure. That would still grow. I mean, genres are squishier than ever. They're very rare.
In the era of 10-hour season epics or bingeable shows streaming, it's totally within the possibility for there to be an audience for consumers to get into this. Again, not at the time of 2001 when these movies are, or late 90s, early 2000s when these movies are made.
Right.
It was already big enough to sit for 2 hours in a theater.
Top 3 budgets just for comparison for horror movies: Van Helsing 2004. Adjusted $222 million. It was 160 million.
Nothing
nominal.
Flop.
Yeah. Let me get through the whole thing. Look, you're going to interrupt. World War Z 2013, 201 million. I Am Legend
movie?
2007.
It's a terrible movie.
Hey, shut up. They are horror movies. You're not wrong. You're interrupting. I Am Legend 2007, 188 million. So which one of those were your favorites?
Van Helsing.
Van Helsing was the best movie there.
Van Helsing is far and away the best of those.
It was also very much a horror movie, even though it was crap. Sorry. End of Days, 1999, 169 million. Lord of the Rings would have absolutely. Now, as a fan's perspective, I'm intrigued and would like to subscribe to your magazine. However, from a big budget producer, and how are we going to get New Line Cinema to greenlight this? You're out of your freaking mind. But could you imagine focusing in on the horror tropes of the Nazgul are hunting you and you're being hunted?
What's weird wasn't New Line Cinema put on the map by the Nightmare on Elm Street movies? Wasn't that their big thing before Lord of the Rings?
I don't know.
Yeah.
They do hit good horror point, like when the Nazgul's leaning over the hobbits were hiding, the bugs are coming out, really tense moment. Oh, hey.
Great title.
like roller coaster scary, where it's just like, oh, there goes my stomach, wee, So yeah,
there are also better stories if you want to go hard. Like that's the thing with Lord of the Rings. There are so many anthologies you could tell that are like you could do Lovecraftian horror with some of the shit.
We need the poo horror,
sure.
And you could do the smaller scale stuff with your orcs and your ring wraiths and the more physical battles.
I feel like these movies did capture the sense of horror of them, of like the
they did, but that's not like you could tell a dedicated quote unquote horror story. You could have those elements with the Baron and Luthien stuff. Like in the middle of their big thing is a huge when she's going to Melkor's palace. That huge horror elements there.
There's this whole story that's told off scene and not in the movie at all of the necromancer of Dunlin. Like as we briefly mentioned, that the Krebine, the crows that were spying on people and how evil they were, is just whatever. It's like it was all very interesting, but I just
rewind that line. It's like, what is he saying?
Yeah, I didn't understand what
something.
I didn't know
Krebine out of
as a
Dunlin.
kid, so I had to ask people who had read the books, like, what are these things? Like, oh, they're spies for the evil people. Okay, good enough for me. But in the Council of Elrond in the book, they were kind of describing that there was this big fight, and it was this big thing. It's like that would be a great little story on its own to see anywhere because necromancers are cool.
Well, yeah, you talk about a story getting out of hand. Things get really risky if you start being like, okay, well, so the Lord of the Rings told you like this much, but if we go to the histories of Middle Earth, this is what's happening behind the scenes, and then you try and incorporate some of that. I mean, that could be good, because it's like, okay, so we've got book 1, and we get to the Council of Elrond, but we deal with the Barrow Wights on our way. We get chased by the Nazgul, because I'm trying to think, it's a movie, dude. You're only going to get people to sit there for 2 hours if you got some action. Unless you're trying to go for like the Oscars and we got to watch like La La Ranch or whatever the hell
they did get a lot of Oscars
these days. So you've got that, but then it's like, does the second one, when we go to Moria, do they take a side story, be like, what are the dwarves of the Lonely Mountain doing? Because like that should be a question. Like that's all cool that we're here in Moria and shit. Where did those guys come from? Spoiler, the same place. And what are the dwarves of the Lonely Mountain doing now that they've been sitting on their gold for the last 50 years and all this other shit? That could be wild. Right. Yeah. Like a chunk of them, some of them didn't make it out of the Hobbit, and, more went to Moria and died. And, they've taken the Western Bridge and anyway, that's like one of my favorite scenes out of the movie for some reason. Like, again, talk about horror themes, right? Like that absolutely captures that, that dread of, so we're trapped and we know we're going to die here, but we're going to fight because we're trapped and we're going to die here.
Oh, you could probably do that. You could do Balin's Expedition as a horror short for
right.
Moria is a great setting for that.
I mean, it happens quite a bit before the Lord of the Rings, though, right? But like, because they supposedly they had been there for a while and stuff. But yeah.
Oh no, I'm not. I'm not committing to the idea of horror elements in the Fellowship. I'm just talking about everything else.
I mean, you're probably gonna get it, right?
Because like do it as a side story. Yeah.
They sold like they're going the Star Wars treatment is what.
We'll get it, and it'll all be shit, and I'm not going to watch it, so I don't care.
Yeah, so unfortunately, the Star Wars treatment these days isn't exactly synonymous with like, oh man, I can't wait to see it on the big screen with great writing and actors and shit like that. More like the Star Wars treatment is synonymous with like, oh, I hope D&D get this script and drive it into the effing ground because that's what we're gonna get, so.
Quick side tangent of 10 seconds. That new D&D movie looks fucking awesome.
Yeah, I'm excited.
It looks funny, but it doesn't look awesome.
I'm mildly optimistic. Shouldn't be.
I keep forgetting we're all podcasters, so we're all full of hot takes, so we can just say whatever the hell comes to mind, and
cool. I think changes they made that was.
You should watch that. That was fun.
What was it?
Cocaine Bear.
Oh no, yeah. Amusing, probably, but
yeah. I'm gonna upset at least one member of this podcast now.
Shocking.
Where's my pitch?
Removing Tom Bombadil was really good.
No, I agree. I have never been in the camp of Tom Bombadil needs to be in this movie. You will never.
He can be a side
I don't
story.
think he need to be in the movie.
I
don't think you need to be in the movie.
I don't.
I just put the name there just to stir the pot a bit. No, my thought on Tom
people who unironically stumped for that are idiots and don't know.
Not for the movie. Not for a movie. But in the book,
he's part of the story, my dude.
In the book,
like what's to stump for?
In the book, he makes sense.
So-
No,
And
he doesn't. In the book, he's there
He's like-
because
He's like Sam
his
if
kids
there's no
likes his
Sam.
Tom Bombadil short stories or something.
Yeah, he
He's
felt very out of
irrelevant.
place.
Well, I think what happens with Sam throughout the Fellowship, and Sam having that kind of common sense groundedness, is reflected in its ultimate sense in Tom Bombadil. So I think in that sense, and that Tom Bombadil gives a picture of a larger. Now, I'm not saying you need to be a movie.
Is Tom Bombadil like time traveling Sam? Is that what
Yeah,
you're saying?
totally.
Like when Sam goes
totally.
off into the West, he gets big, and then he finds a portal, and then he goes back in time and sets
Yeah,
himself
and-
on this journey.
And his-
My name is Sam Mapusa Yellow.
Well, I think
Yeah,
there's
Tom,
a, that,
talk about
but-
horror elements. Tom Bombadil is the king in
movie-
yellow. So
the
if
movie-
you know, you know.
the movie it presents Sauron as evil, like just evil. So rather than like that kind of subtle gradation of Sauron's place, I get that. In a world where Sauron is evil and just evil, like just the evil, the one evil, then a Tom Bombadil doesn't make sense. But a Tom Bombadil is supposed to be like the kind of backdrop to show that even Sauron is not the great shakes, and all the great and all the wise are so worried about Sauron, and the humble things, the simple things, the grounded things will defeat him. That is the hobbits. And Tom Bombadil is kind of the ultimate image of that. I'm not saying it needs to be in the movie, but there better be a Tom Bombadil episode if there's ever a TV show. Okay,
You are going to be severely disappointed in that episode, but go nuts.
That would be. It's like the Trickster God episodes from fucking Supernatural, where it's just like, excuse me, what are we doing here? Like, because
How
it's such
dare
a
you?
tone shift.
Those are awesome.
I was going to say the
didn't
Gabriel
disparage
episodes
them. You are the haters. I'm saying we need more Tom Bombadil. You are the haters. So why don't you take
How
that
dare-
away
how-
and back at yourself?
Dare you compare Gabriel to Tom Bombadil?
I was going to say,
How
if they
dare
played it
you.
like that, you could. But again, he shouldn't be in this way.
Yeah.
No.
I agree that it's a tonal shift, but I think it tells you important things about the world. And if we got to listen to all the other subtext about how, it's about humility versus grandeur and all of this other stuff, which in my opinion, you got to dig for in the original Lord of the Rings. It's not like Gandalf comes out at the end and tells you, so what you just saw was, the humble hobbits triumph over evil Sauron. It's in the subtext, yes. Tom Bombadil just lacks the subtext. He's just there, and then you got to kind of be like, wait a minute, what is he
that's
telling me?
Whole fandom with everything, with all the information available. It's like I think we talked about this last time. Tom Bombadil is like nobody's sure who or what he's supposed to do. There's just theories, and even I don't think Tolkien knew.
That's true.
I don't think Tolkien knew. He was just like, yeah,
Sure.
Tom Bombadil's here. My kids like him. I made short stories with him. This is Tom Bombadil. He has yellow boots. Let's go.
Right.
Well, another thing that was very, very controversial here was those songs. They had one in the movie, right? The Lament
The
for
songs were
Gandalf.
nice. I like the songs in the books.
Lament for
I mean,
Gandalf.
sometimes it feels like a bit.
They do the Misty
Misty
Mountains and a few
I was going to say
others.
the songs are
Not
good when
a
they're
tonal
in
shift.
that like ethereal sort of like it fits the setting type deal,
Exactly.
or if they're Merry and Pippin,
When it's not
being
just-
drunk assholes.
No, it's just like kind of like pulling me out of the already badly paced story to be.
Singing.
Right. So I think there's a difference between like the way that they're presented in the movies makes sense in the scenes, right? Because you've got the green dragon, shanty or whatever you would call it. You've got, them at Lothlorien, you've got the Misty Mountains, which is fantastic and all of that stuff.
Okay, at the
Whereas,
Council of Elrond, Bilbo breaks out into song in defense of Aragorn. Like there's just gigantic meeting
Right.
of everything, and then just
What
like
I
I have a
was gonna
song
say-
here.
Yeah. What I was going to say is like the books are almost more like West Side Story or Lord of the Rings, the musical, right? Because it's like every chapter's got a song,
Yeah.
so.
It's amazing they haven't
The
done
only
stage
defense I
adaptation
could
for
think
this yet.
of was what I think I said when we talked about it the first time is the whole story is supposed to be the god of the world singing. So thematically I can see how.
Well, yeah, it's like
why
these
there's-
guys who are on this side, and they're full of the life of the creator, and song is the way you get these things across. It's like, okay, sure, but so was Singing in the Rain, and I don't like that.
Yeah.
compared to
I mean, yeah, I just don't know. Like,
Well, because I guess the whole point of where Tolkien's pulling from the Beowulf, that's a song that's sung. The epics are the songs sung around the campfire with those, and that's why you have the horror stories and the horror stories on the campfire. That's why there's these elements of the dread and the adventure and the valor and the what's going on in the minds of the characters. And I just wanted to point out that even in the theatrical, they had the lament for Gandalf, which was wonderful. They just said there's a lament for Gandalf.
Yeah, and then the extended, they added in like Sam's attempted contribution, which I thought was cute.
Right. Yeah, they've got the lament for Gandalf, and then they're like, "Hey, I don't speak Elvish. Could you tell me?" And he's like, "No, bitch, because I'm too sad." I'm like, well, maybe I'm sad too, and could use the closure, dude. So
there's a wonderful
no, because he would something would get lost in translation. They would be like, "Oh, now I'm sad."
So it's interesting that might be Legolas's only flaw. But one time he was trying to remember a song, and he got like several paragraphs down, and that's where my memory kind of stops and it gets fuzzy, and I shouldn't continue somewhere in the books. And he doesn't try to translate the lament, but like when we meet Aragorn and he's telling was it like the Baron and Luthien story or one of the other ones, he translates from Elvish into Hobbit Common and does so perfectly the entire song. And it was like it still rhymes and has all the correct meters and everything. Like he has godly levels of power of song translation.
Well, there's two things to that.
Numenorean blood. So
one is that's his direct lineage; those are his direct ancestors. Number one. Number two, he's only got 80 years worth of information rumbling around in his head. Legolas has like 6,000. He's gonna forget a thing or two.
Yeah. I thought Legolas wasn't that old.
No, he's probably like 1,500, something like that.
Yeah. No, I thought he was like 200 makes sense, but I don't remember.
I don't know. He's a couple thousand years old. He's older than.
Is he?
He's older than Gandalf coming, I think.
Oh wow!
Because even he has that line in the book where even he considers Gandalf like a kid,
a young kid,
the same way that Treebeard does. He's not as old as Elrond, for instance. I don't think he is anyway.
Right.
But he's old. He's up there.
Well, because putting him more than 2,000 years old means that he could have been at the Battle of the Ring. So like that's why I'm like Legolas is set to 87 in the Third Age, according to this random Wikipedia I found. Old. Yeah. So
is there anything you think did not age well in the movie? Because as I was watching it, it seemed like there was a lot of lines and deliveries and things where I could really tell this was made in the early 2000s. It's really showing the mark of its time. Gandalf's prosthetic nose.
Showing its mark is not the same thing as aging badly.
Fair enough.
I can see a movie that's made in the early 2000s and it has a certain feel of the early 2000s and I kind of miss it. But that's like, actually, I kind of miss it. So I think that was great. Anything that actually aged badly, it's
I think
CGI.
Of the stuff that aged well, I think that the music by far has aged the best.
I can't believe it's the same person that did the music in Rings of Power. It's so much better in Lord of the Rings.
Because it's not the same person who did it. Rings of Power is done by Bear McCready, who did the music for the God of War, the last two God of War games, which has much better music than Rings of Power because he actually cared about that, and Amazon was a paycheck.
Okay, yeah, I thought it was the same.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't. Shore didn't do the show.
The things I noticed that when I was watching it with my friend while I commented on this didn't hold up well is there were some special effects things. I think especially the octopusy thing from the water did not hold up well.
It's called The Watcher in the Water. It is not a Bond movie.
The Watcher in the Water. Did not hold up well. Small things.
I think The Watcher holds up okay, mostly because it's in the dark. So other than when it's the tentacle shots and stuff, it's pretty good. When it's moving up onto the shore, it looks kind of janky.
Yeah, I don't know. There are moments. I don't know. Maybe I watched the 4K remastered edition, and I don't know. There's
possible.
some.
I mean, the Balrog is the clear example of the thing that holds up excellent, and probably will forever.
Yeah.
Yeah, that holds up really well.
Well,
there are green screen moments where I can feel it. That this,
well, even in the beginning battle, like those are kind of the same copy pasted elves doing that scythe motion, right?
Great moment though.
Yeah,
I mean, it's not as bad as like in the Battle of Five Armies where you could clearly see the CGI face when they're like shifting and moving and stuff of those elves, and it's janky as shit. But
I think I've seen Viggo Mortensen comment on this where it's like that's why I also think the first one actually holds up the best. It has the least computer.
It has a lot of actual physical makeup effects to do that, like the orcs, the Uruk-hai. Like, there's so much real things that you're looking at. It really helps it age, and just kind of like I think there's a a perception somewhere in your brain that's hard to do correctly with the CGI of like, I'm looking at something that's real or looking at something that's made up.
Well,
Right.
with AI and deepfakes and stuff these days, we might be getting
maybe,
out
but
of
maybe
it
eventually.
valley, but
I would say it's for me, it's the music and the landscape shots which are by far the best, and of course, practical effects are always practical effects. But maybe I was just a dumb kid and I didn't notice. But Gandalf's big fake nose was really obvious for me on this latest viewing on the Netflix version. But maybe it's just something I need to learn.
That didn't stand out to me, at least.
I suppose watching it recently, their contacts stand out. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but so Orlando Bloom has brown eyes, but Legolas has blue. Therefore, he has to have blue contacts. There's no way getting around that unless you're trying to CGI it, but that doesn't always work correctly. But then,
it's certainly not 20 years ago.
Like the same thing actually with Arwen. Like I think Liv Tyler has blue eyes, but they put blue contacts on her anyway, and I think it adds to the weirdness. It's something that might be harder to place for the elves. They're just super special. Yeah,
right.
Sort of ethereal looks to them.
Yeah, but like Elrond doesn't have contacts in it. He just has fantastic blue eyes. Whatever. But Grima Wormtongue,
he's just so pretty.
It's always funny because like Elrond is always one of those things that kind of sticks out. Like if there was anything, because it's like what's the actor's name?
Hugo Weaving.
Yeah, his voice has so much gravitas, right? But like as like a king of the elves, he just never quite hits the mark for me because it's like
weird.
He's stoic, he's got gravitas, but he always is a little weird to me during even like the battle of the ring scenes where it's just like he's supposed to be young and heroic and whatever. The hair always kind of trips me out, and like even just like watching him at the ring, and like I know part of that is because I had watched the Matrix trilogy before, the Lord of the Rings and everything, but like I don't know if I could point to somebody and be like, oh yeah, this is my Elrond or something, right? But it's always interesting. It's like if they do recast him, hopefully they get somebody who's got the same kind of gravitas, but has a little bit more too. Like I don't know, it was always a little weird to me, but it's gonna be tough.
Yeah, see, I always, and this was me. To me, he fit the vibe very well of. Like Galadriel and Celeborn are much more of these regal figures, especially when you meet them. Right. I think Elrond is kind of like the he strikes me as he's the king of the last, in the steward kind of way. It's like his time is coming to an end, and he's got that sort of vibe to it. So it's less of a regal thing and more of a if we don't get shit done now, and this is the weight of my life type deal.
It's like the gritty version of an elf king, and as learning more about him, of like he watched his brother choose to be human and die, and he's facing his daughter doing the same thing, and he really doesn't want that to happen. Versus like Galadriel is a different kind of elf monarch. I get like godly thing. She's delightfully spooky in the correct way in this movie.
She's way more different. Like ethereal and unknowable.
Yeah. She's a good witch. So that's what it is.
Well, except for a solid 30 seconds there.
Well, yeah. I mean,
you know what did hold up amazingly? The costumes, all of them. Like,
yes,
it looks so like having watched Rings of Power somewhat recently. Like, and people said the costumes were bad. And it's like this does look alright. But then I rewatched the movie. It's like, man, this looks so much better. Like, and also all the makeup and I guess and the little details with the dirty nails.
That's what you get when you hand make chainmail.
It was so. Yeah. It's so much better.
Yeah, I don't know if that was detail with the dirty nails. Like Aragorn, like hiked for 3 days to get to set, so he probably just like showed up dirty. And they were like, it's perfect. So
I thought that was Boromir because he was afraid of flying.
Yeah, so he would hike with all of his gear, and it had it's method acting.
If you die as much as Sean Bean does, I'd be afraid of all manner of transportation.
It's like, look, am I going to die in a helicopter crash or am I going to get eaten? Well, I've got swords and armor, so maybe I'll take my chances.
Like, how do you want me to die this time? Oh, we're shooting arrows at you, but don't worry, we checked, and it's not like the knife that we threw at Aragorn. These are definitely the fake arrows this time.
Right.
Like, thanks.
Can't believe he actually hit that arrow out of the air. No, not arrow, that knife out of the air with the sword. That's impressive.
We could have been in recast situation really, really early on.
Yeah.
I always wish there was a third one because it's the knife, it's the broken toe with the kicking of the helmet and that real reaction. But there was never a third one where it was just like accidental Aragorn greatness in Return of the King.
Yeah, Aragorn really was Aragorn.
Like he didn't actually summon an army of ghosts. They didn't go.
Well, I guess there was the tidbit about the horse. He bonded with the horse so much.
That's where I was going.
He bought it,
Yeah. Took it home.
I saw
in the other horse movie that he did after. I can't remember, but yeah, there you go.
That was the same horse? Awesome.
I thought so. Yeah.
I don't know.
Or maybe he bought that one too. There was some other connection between those two movies though. So, but
yeah, they both had Viggo Mortensen.
Right. Yeah.
He's just gonna have his horse all the movies, like the Russian mobster one, horse.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, it probably saves on the budget.
The Green Book or whatever it's called. He's not driving the guy around; they're going on horse.
After the Lord of the Rings, he had this really weird Western phase, so because he could have a horse in every movie.
Could be worse.
I saw a hot take on Twitter. I think nobody here will agree with that. Only the first one. The first Lord of the Rings movie, the extended version is actually worse than the theatrical version.
The third one?
The first one.
Oh, the first one. Oh, I've heard about the third one.
Yeah.
The only scene that I think might detract from a future scene is, and I think I brought this up before, is when Gandalf and them are walking through the mines and he lights up all the mithril and he is explaining what it is and stuff. And later on, Frodo gets skewered. In the theatrical version, from the time he gets the shirt to the time he gets skewered, you can easily forget that he has that and have that moment of like, oh, fuck, did they actually just kill Frodo? As opposed to when the Gandalf scene is there, that's already now fresh in your head for like 10 minutes later. But it's still fine as a scene and all that other stuff.
But it's dramatic irony anyway, right? Like it always is dramatic irony. We see Bilbo give him the armor. If you're familiar with the story of The Hobbit, you know what the mithril is and all of this other stuff, right? So it's always meant to be information that the audience has, but the characters don't. And so, that's literally dramatic irony, isn't it? So, yeah, but I do remember watching it the first time because I hadn't read the book, so I was like, I had forgotten for sure. So I could see that argument, being the benefit, but yeah,
but again, that's one scene. So even if I held to that, it's like none of the other shit. Nothing that's coming up as a complaint.
One thing I feel like the theatrical is missing that I really enjoyed when I watched an extended version for the first time is the gifts from Galadriel.
Sure. Yeah.
They're just kind of there in the theatrical, their cloaks and everything, and
and you get that great joke, and he's talking about the lembas breads, like how many did you eat?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and it's funny too because like going through that and like you guys were talking about the barrow whites and a bunch of other stuff. Like for me, like I'm just tagging onto that because my perspective is shifted now that I've DM'd games, like I've been a dungeon master. And so it's very much so like, oh yeah, you guys are going to need this gear for an upcoming adventure. And so it's just like, why are we going to Lothlorien? Oh, well, because Galadriel's got to give you all this gear so that you guys don't get smoked when you get to Mordor, So it's just like, there are a couple of those scenes where it's like, I mean, we fought like a dozen orcs and it's not like the orcs where like you didn't see them go through and be like, oh, I found 25 gold and some healing potions like you would in a D&D game. So we had to have these mileposts where we could get our gear and whatever. But yeah, it's just kind of funny.
I do love the moment when Gimli's talking about having received the gift of Galadriel's hair. Like, I was pleased that when reading the book that it wasn't made up for the movie because I loved it so much and I didn't want it to have just been made up because it was funny. And
It's actually like wildly important. Yeah, it's wildly important for dwarves, but it's just one of those things you wouldn't realize if you didn't get into the deep lore, So like,
it's important like that Legolas knows what's going on too, because he would know the story of Galadriel and Fëanor and all that stuff.
Right.
I think,
and it's also why like it's a chunk of why Gimli is allowed. He goes into the West as well, doesn't he? So, like,
Legolas.
Yeah, he's the
only boat to go.
Yeah, he's the only dwarf who gets to go.
Damn.
I do think that since you mentioned that moment that was in the book and the extended edition, I think the parts which really work the best for me in the movie are the parts which are, dialogue lifted directly from the book, because I think the actors with some of those lines from Tolkien that are just, very carefully chosen, it just works beautifully. I think, in particular, at the very beginning, Bilbo's line at the party, the kind of anticlimax and the shock, and that line works well. But particularly those two lines from Gandalf in the theatrical version, the it was pity that stayed Bilbo's hand, and then the thing at the very end, after the. By the way, the weirdly common voiceovers, like that's something I don't remember seeing in a lot of movies, except like 1984's Dune. All those voiceovers that this movie had, but the voiceover at the end with Gandalf's line about, "I wish I had not lived to see some such times."
Right.
So the language is so beautifully constructed. The words are so beautifully constructed, and the actors, and I guess that would be literally probably the two best actors in this movie, right? Was it Ian McKellen and what's his face, Bilbo?
Ian Holm.
Ian Holm.
Ian.
Ian and Ian, both Ians. The Ians did great, and
poor Saruman.
He narrowed his eye very convincingly several times.
Yes, he did.
And the Witch King, great shrieking.
So this is a fun little question. Hard to put to an answer, I think, but when kind of just talking about these movies a couple days ago with friends, there was which actor was the worst in these movies?
That's easy. I feel like that's Legolas. That's Orlando.
Really?
No.
Yeah.
He's the weakest character in the sense that he has the least amount of sort of dynamism to him, but he's acted perfectly fine for what he's supposed to do.
Who was the worst actor then? If not Orlando Bloom in this movie, or in these trilogies.
I would have to think about this for a second.
Personally, I think it was the pony, but
Bill
has to be a human.
Bill did great.
He's braver than most.
I assume we're talking about like a main character, someone that gets more than a minute of screen time type deal.
I don't know. I mean, if you can convincingly say that one extra just did a bad job, I'll take it, because it was really hard to come to an answer. And we had kind of
very
said,
elf-like, or
honestly, it would probably then.
Enough.
And I wouldn't want to necessarily say it because I think she was bad, but it would probably be Arwen.
Yeah, Liv Tyler.
I think it would be Liv Tyler.
I don't think.
And again, it's not because I think she's bad, but if we have to pick the weakest one,
I don't think she's.
I think that's where your
Orlando
challenge. It's
Bloom,
like,
personally,
these are all fantastic actors. So who's the weakest is really hard.
Who's the weakest in like Gone with the Wind or whatever? Pick
easily
a classic and just like like it's just like I don't know. I didn't hate anybody for the memes. I was gonna say one of the Hobbits, right? Pick one.
No, because exactly. was another one that I heard of. Just like no, I disagree. He executed that character perfectly.
He's perfect. But
his character's annoying, but he plays it well.
He's a child of hobbits. They are long lived. He's 19, and so he's like 12 equivalent.
Right.
And he's a kid. Cody just wants to
Elrond didn't want him to go, and he just fucking did it anyway.
You need people of intelligence on this sort of thing.
Right.
Mission.
Yeah.
Quest.
Thing.
That was one of the small changes of like whether he dropped a stone down a well when they were in Moria, or he accidentally touches something and a giant body falls down the well and it's a giant clattering sound. I loved that little change of the movie because it just ties in something that was true that the character did in the books and made it a really big problem very quickly.
Right.
And I think it's also actually very true to the character to do that.
Yes.
Right. I don't think that change damages the character. I think it's in the context and the grammar of that movie. That's the kind of thing Mary would do, because he was always kind of a little bit foolish, a little bit comic relief, and so I guess maybe more often on that side of maybe he's more on the side of being a little bit childish, and the Emperor has no clothes, and being a bit strong-headed, strong-willed. Beyond what he has, and he has no idea what's really going on. But it worked. It worked. It was good. If somebody's going to be a comic relief in the Fellowship, it's Mary, and because that's exactly the role he played in the story before, even if in a slightly different way. Completely agree.
Okay, we did it.
Yeah.
All right. Have we said everything we're going to say about this movie? Probably not.
No,
But
no, we could easily go.
But
way
then
longer.
we're gonna have to commit to 3 hours, and
And then the extended edition, and then
we already committed to that as far as I was
Yeah.
concerned. I don't care. I don't want to hear
Yeah,
about
no,
it.
the homework was to watch a 4-hour movie. We've all done this multiple times, so who cares? It's all right. I guess we can call it here for today, and we'll continue on with more learning talk. So we'll be all over the place.
Andreas, plug our stuff
we're
before the director cuts
Yeah,
us off.
we have a Patreon where you can give us money. When you give us money there, you get to come on our Discord and have fun with us. You get to get insulted by EG. You get to ping Ben, and he's not going to answer you.
Not that we don't appreciate the super
It's
chats.
funny
Cody,
because it's true.
Yes.
yeah.
Yes, you can also give us money straight from YouTube, and then
but YouTube takes more of a cut.
You get to learn how to communicate only in GIFs.
Yes,
Well,
that's a
everyone
skill.
should know that by now.
Kill it.
Yes,
And
because
I say
I'm
it
gonna
that
kill
way.
him.
I actually agree with Justin, but I say it that way.
I'm
just
gonna
because
I'm gonna figure out some way to muck with your
only
game
in
now,
GIFs.
so
Okay, are you
Yeah.
happy? Yeah.
gifts. There
Thank
you go.
you.
You get your pizza
Yeah.
back.
it is a GIF.
A gift from above. What?
You can also check out some of our other shows that we currently have active, which is no shows, I believe.
You mean
Dresden.
Dresden File podcast, the only one that
Well,
people
you know,
watch.
other than the one we're also on that people probably know on from this YouTube and this.
That's literally named.
The
The
channel
YouTube
name?
channel's
No,
literally
we
named.
don't have any
right?
other. We've stopped that. We're done with Dresden Files. We can't wait anymore.
Me and Justin are going to start a programming one soon with his friend from his video game.
Did you consult
Sure.
Justin?
Replica
Yeah.
is that friend Replica?
I totally just threw that. No,
Yeah.
I mean,
That's
no,
a
you're
joke.
supposed to do a cooking show. Remember?
I'm not. No. I have never agreed to this. You're just trying to make
We
me.
decided for
Justin
you.
didn't
It's
agree to
fine.
this programming show either. But if you're gonna do one,
Yeah. I mean, I'm just spitballing here.
don't spit in your food when you're cooking it. That's very unsanitary.
So yeah, that's I think that's the most important blocks. Give us money, so we can
Yeah, money.
keep,
That's the really important
making
part
this
of this message. Is give us money.
at least so
Yeah.
we can pay for the hosting.
Right.
Yeah, that'd be great.
And next week we're arguing about casting, right?
I
Was
think
that what we
so.
were doing?
I think we're going to go
Yeah.
back to the Dresden Files fan casting, and we're going to argue about which actor is the best for which characters. This is last time we did this, we yelled quite a lot. So
The
it's gonna be great.
subreddit had new entries, so we could argue about those. That'll be
It's
great.
been so long that the actors have changed age brackets, and now we have to go find the new ones.
Yeah, I was gonna say like
All the ones that used to be Harry are now being cast as Marcone. And
Exactly.
my Thomas was Ian Somerhalder from the Vampire Diaries, and he's too old now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I don't even know
Oh,
who are
man.
the new
I-
young actors anymore.
I run into that problem, especially when I talk about it with the wife. We're like, oh, yeah, we should cast this guy. It's like, it's been like 20 years since he did that movie. So, yeah.
So we're going to pay
getting-
attention to how time flies,
That's where they-
and who's the new batch of people who we can try to force into being Dresden eventually.